So you've watched all of your favorite woodworking channels and now you want to build something. Don't worry, we don't have to start here. You may be asking, what tools do I need? How expensive is it gonna be? Where do I even start? Well, don't worry. In this video, we're going back to basics and talking about a few different tools and accessories that I believe every beginner should start with. Even better, you can find all of these tools at your local home improvement store without breaking the bank. And yes, we will be talking about costs, and also yes, we'll be covering a lot. But don't worry, I'll leave links to everything in the description below, or you can scan this QR code to get a copy of my recommended shopping list for beginner woodworkers. But we do have a lot to cover, so let's get started. I know we all want to jump headfirst into the thing we're the most excited about, power tools. I mean, let's be real. How many times do you watch your favorite woodworkers and go, wow, must be nice to have a shop like that? The truth is, not everyone has an industrial workshop, and that's okay. So whether you're a broke college student working out of your dad's storage shed, or a trust fund woodworker who inherited a mansion full of tools, also like, must be nice, can you share some with me? Thank you. Let's explore a couple of storage solutions for anyone looking to start a workshop. And to preface, this video is not sponsored by any of the brands shown or any of the brands I'm talking about. This is purely my take on what's best for the person just starting their woodworking adventure. While it's tempting to go to the store and buy the bougiest, most decked out, expensive workbench toolbox combo on the market, what if I told you that there is an easier and cheaper solution for your tools? One item I always recommend to beginners is this. This is a mobile pack-out kit. And if you're worried about the size, this one's so big, even a Sam can fit in it. These are multi-purpose, easy to manage storage solutions that double as mobile workbenches when you need them to be. Not only are these great for storing your first tool collection, they're a really easy way to keep your inevitable tool hoarding addiction in check. Trust me, it's gonna happen eventually. Ask me how I know. Plus, they're mobile, meaning that you can take them from your workshop to a job site and everything in between. But what about my accessories, Sam? Great question. Did I mention that these have matching accessory storage too? And before you start yelling at the screen, I promise we're gonna talk about the price of these in just a few moments. Hang on. I wish these existed when I first started because my first setup consisted of my mom's Tupperware containers and like literally a couple of screws in the wall. Now, while I recommend these packouts as a starter system, there are a few cons. First, they can be very limited as your workshop grows. Like at some point, it might be more cost effective to get a traditional toolbox workspace combo. Also, I mentioned that they can double as a mobile workbench in a bind, but they're not really built for that. Like while you can clamp things to them or use them as sawhorses, packouts are mostly made of plastic, which means the more you use them as a workbench, the more likely they are to break over time. However, if you're starting in a very small space like a storage shed, and on a very small budget, these are a great storage solution. Okay, let's get to the part everyone is really curious about, pricing. So depending on the brand you choose, larger pack-out systems start around $80 with accessory organizers adding around $15 more. And compared to the more expensive options, these are more affordable. And of course, the more you add to your assembly though, the more expensive it gets. So as a personal rule, I say start simple and work with what you have and then build it up from there. All right, now that we have a pseudo shop set up, let's talk about some equipment that I wish I had on hand for my first builds. Some might not agree, but these are a couple of the most overlooked items that will make it so much easier for you to jump in and get started. They say that you can never have too many of these. I'll take clamps for 1,000, Alex. So these small things are a woodworker's best friend, well, besides your workshop partner. I could get into detail about all of the different clamps on the market, what they're used for, and why you might need them, but the reality is you don't need to invest in the world's most expensive clamps at first. You can actually pick up clamps in all different sizes from any major home improvement store or even Amazon. Smaller clamps can even start around 80 cents each, while medium clamps, which is what you'll probably use most often when you first start, are around $8 to $10, and larger clamps start around $20 and then increase from there. Bonus tip, on my local used marketplace, people are always getting rid of clamps for like super cheap, so don't be afraid to shop around locally and see what's available. Clamps are not just important for glue ups or holding wood in place, they're also important for shop safety as well. For example, let's say that you need to cut a long piece of wood that hangs off of your pack out, see what I did there, or your workbench. Free holding the wood is highly dangerous and could definitely cause injury, so this is where a few clamps will make this usually sketchy cut much safer and much more manageable. And not to be dramatic, but not only are these clamps going to like keep your woodworking together, but they'll also hold you together in sketchy situations. So do yourself a favor and definitely get some clamps. Future you will thank you. So this next piece of equipment really sucks. You know, this wouldn't be a DIY Huntress video without one dad joke, right? Listen, your shop is gonna get dusty, dirty, messy, and yes, that's part of the fun, but also really sucks to clean, pun intended. And if we're being real, sawdust is like not the greatest thing for our lungs. Trust me, if I had one of these in my shop when I was starting, I probably would have had like way less angry comments on my first few YouTube videos. Not only are dust vacs good for cleaning up messes, but in most situations, you can actually hook your vacuum up to the tools that you're using, which not only helps with the mess, but stops a lot of that wood dust from getting into the air to begin with. And this means less breathing in hazardous air and also less cleaning up the shop afterwards, which like, everybody loves that, let's be real. Luckily, there are a ton of dust vac options on the market. There's Rigid, Ryobi, Milwaukee, like the list literally goes on and on. Personally, I started with a Rigid vacuum in my workshop for like less than $60, but there are definitely cheaper options and you can use whatever works best for your situation. Now that your first workshop is ready to roll, let's talk about the thing that you all came here for, power tools. There is a Jupiter-sized amount of information on YouTube and the interwebs about what tool to buy first, where to buy it, what brands to buy. Honestly, it's like literally so exhausting. Everybody's setup and opinion on this is different, and that's okay. My goal in this video is to keep it as simple as possible and share my personal expertise on what tools I think are great starting points for beginner woodworkers based on my experience and also based on being a broke college kid on a budget when I first started. So just a heads up, this is a very basic rundown of each tool and what they do, and spoiler alert, I might be working on something very special to break down each of these tools in a way more in-depth way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Before we talk about these tools, here's a quick story. When I first started woodworking, I could not afford tools. Instead, my dad gave me his very old blue Ryobi drills, which by the way, if you haven't noticed, they don't even make tools in this color anymore. And even though they weren't the best tools on the market, like this thing like has some weight on it. Still works though. I was able to start my woodworking business with them and build projects for years, and this helped me save for better tools in the future. So moral of that story, this is not a debate on who has the better tool brand. This is literally about starting from zero. Okay, now that's out of the way, there's one more point I want to make, which is this. There's nothing wrong with secondhand tools, and there's nothing wrong with hand-me-down tools when you're first starting. When you're first starting a woodworking business or a hobby or adventure, you will have to invest in tools of some kind, but they don't have to be sparkling new right away. Exhibit A. In fact, I mentioned earlier that I like to look for clamps on my local marketplace, and that's also a great place to look for tools if you're on a really tight budget. Most of the time I find these tools will work and they're just fine for what you need, and they'll be at a discounted price, which means that you can buy a drill, a coffee, and your morning bagel on the same day. As a New Yorker, that's a win. I'm just gonna say it. That being said, if you are looking for new tools to start your adventure with, here's what I recommend. People always ask me what my 3 starting tools are, but in all honesty, my magic number is 5. Hear me out. You will need tools that can cut and assemble projects. And there are ways that you can like cheat the system, and we'll talk about that a little later, but ultimately you're going to want tools that will complete the entire project without wishing that you had more tools. If you're going to be buying tools, you will want tools that can also be used in your workshop, home, car, like literally anywhere you need them. And that being said, here are my 5 tool recommendations for beginners, and don't worry, like I promised, we'll talk about pricing at the end. These tools that I'm talking about right now are 2 tools that are typically sold together, but I'm still counting them as 2 tools. The first one is a drill. In simplest terms ever, a drill is designed for drilling holes and sometimes screwing things into place. It's not a super powerful tool, but it is a very useful tool. And it's also something that is very handy to just have around the house. So you can like really never go wrong with having one on hand. Now its pseudo counterpart, the driver, I feel like Vanna White. A driver has a lot more power and is typically built for, get this, driving fasteners into place. While I don't feel a driver is as necessary as a drill in most cases, you're probably gonna wanna have both, and let's be real, like they're typically sold as combo kits anyway, so you can get a really good deal for the duo, but we'll talk about that when we talk about pricing. Something to note, for those who are wondering, you can use a driver bit in a drill, but you can't use a drill bit in a driver in most instances. So to like someone getting started, these look really similar or the same, but they are different from one another. So when you're looking at bits, make sure that you're buying the right pack for the right platform. The good thing is that most brands do actually sell combo packs with drill bits as well, so you can never go wrong with these, but again, we'll talk about those later. The next tool I recommend is used for cutting wood down to size. It's this. In full disclosure, when I started my woodworking journey, I did not have one of these, but I really wish that I did. This is a circular saw. In basic terms, a circular saw is a handheld saw that is used to cut wood. Thus Sam. So let me tell you what I love about these. Circular saws are lightweight, easy to store, and come in handy for many different types of projects. For example, circular saws are great for cutting sheet goods such as plywood, and you can also use them to cut smaller materials as well, like 2x4s, 2x2s, 1x1s, and so on. Because they're on the smaller side, they're portable in nature, which means that they're a great option for a wide variety of jobs both inside and outside of your workshop space. There are some downsides though. While circular saws are, in my opinion, absolutely essential, they're not great at cutting material like trim or decorative molding, and they're not always the best for like completely accurate cuts. Although I do have a few tricks for making them more accurate and useful, but we're gonna talk about that later in the video. So the next one is gonna be one that people will definitely disagree with me about, but when I first started, I needed something to cut a variety of angles and curves without the risk of something kicking back at me. Now, while circular saws are great for making straight cuts, you can get a little more or a lot more creative depending on the project with a jigsaw. Jigsaws are lightweight, have a smaller blade, and allow you to make curved cuts or cuts in tight or weird places in a much safer way. Really being honest with you, without the jigsaw, I would not have been able to convert my van into a tiny home or make like curved cuts or custom sized holes and weird openings in some of the custom furniture I make, or like make the fake brick in my workshop look real. So like, I think I rest my case, like go get a jigsaw. While jigsaws are a great tool, just like a circular saw, they're not great though for accurately cutting molding and trim, and you do have to rely on the quality of the blade that you use rather than the tool itself. So here's what that means. If you invest in a jigsaw, you should buy an array of blades for different jobs, and we can go down a rabbit hole about each different blade, but that's a different video for a different time. Instead, I will leave links to blades that I use in my workshop in the description so you can research them and kind of get an idea of what you might need for certain projects. Okay, if you've been here for a while, you know that I absolutely just love this tool. And for those of you who haven't been here for a while, this is literally my least favorite tool in my entire shop, but it's kind of necessary, I guess. If you want your projects to feel smooth and look professional and polished, you're gonna need an orbital sander. Like, could you hypothetically sand all your projects by hand? Sure. Like, will it take you 10 years to finish a tabletop? Well, like, probably. All jokes aside, having a sander in your shop is gonna be a game changer and a time saver, I promise you, especially if you're going heavy on the woodworking. This here will not only decrease the time it takes to sand down a piece of wood, but it's gonna make that process so much more enjoyable than cramping your hand for days. Now listen, there are so many different brands of sanders that you can buy, and some of them get pretty pricey, but the reality is that even with the lowest quality powered sander, you're gonna save yourself so much time and so much irritation. I know I said 5 tools, but let's pretend like a drill and driver count as one, because they're usually sold as a combo anyway, and just like add a bonus tool to this list, you know? Anyone who has done any of these or watched any of these knows that they can be messy, and I'm talking glue ups. But what about those times where there's not enough space to like put the glue, or the glue's not strong enough to hold on its own? And let's be real, visible screw heads can like definitely ruin the look of a project, especially if you need a piece that you're making to look high quality. So if you're looking to level up right out the gate, I highly recommend investing in one of these. Brad nails are strong enough to actually hold most projects together, and once you add some glue to the mix, like there's some real magic that happens. Also, a brad nailer is a great alternative to a traditional hammer and nail method, and yes, you can do that with your project still, but this is a much quicker and cleaner and accurate way to fasten things together. And like the nails are so small that once you start kind of like adding stain and paint, you really hardly notice they're there, to be quite honest. The biggest con though about brad nailers is that they can start out on the higher side price-wise, and you typically have to buy them separate from other tools, which is a great segue into our next topic. But before that, let's talk about pricing for each individual tool that we just talked about. So a quick search on the interwebs shows us that a good quality starter drill, impact driver, and circular saw are all around $60 each. This doesn't include any extra bits or extra blades, and it may or may not include a battery depending on the brand, especially if you're going cordless, that kind of sucks. Jigsaws run about $99 with a battery and maybe 1 or 2 blades, and orbital sanders will run you about $60 without a battery and about $100 with one. Nailers, which you have to buy separate anyway, cost about $199 with a battery, but if we're being honest, I would pick up the tool without a battery, which saves you like a lot of money, especially if you're sticking with the same brand for your tools, which like clearly I'm not doing a good job with here. So we can get into a tangent about battery adapters, but for the sake of simplicity, when you're just starting, I do recommend sticking to one platform and building from there. Obviously, unless you're getting hand-me-down tools, take the tools for free. So if we're doing math, which like I'm not always great at, that runs up to $378 for the core 5 tools, and then an extra $100 for the nailer, for a total of $478, and that's before tax. So why do I bring this up? Why are we talking about bundle pricing? Well, there's a cheaper alternative to buying all of these tools individually, and it is in the form of something called a combo kit. So sure, you can buy each tool on their own for a marked up price, or you could buy a 5 or 6 tool combo kit for a massive bundled discount. Okay, take this Ryobi combo kit for example. This kit includes the core 5 that I just spoke about, 2 extra tools, a flashlight accessory, 3 batteries, a charger, and tool 2 bags for $379, which if you haven't done the math, comes out to the same price as the 5 tools, and you're getting more stuff in it. That's like an insane discount. And that's not the only combo kit. There are so many different configurations and combos for every tool and brand, so don't be afraid to shop around and find one that fits your needs. The point I'm trying to make here is that buying a combo kit, no matter what brand you choose, will always be cheaper and more cost effective than just buying individual tools when we're talking about new tools. You didn't hear this from me, but if you look around for like Black Friday, Christmas, or like any holiday sales, you're gonna get the best deal. Link in description. And the last point I just wanna make before we move on is that yes, you can outfit your first workshop for under $500. Like, where was this when I was first starting? Do it. Go buy the tools. So hopefully by this point you're not feeling overwhelmed, because we have one more thing to talk about. Well, 2 more. So remember before how I said there are some tricks you can use to maximize your first tool collection when you're starting out? Wait, you mean I could do this without this? Well, kind of. When you're first starting out on a budget, you gotta get crafty. And that's where these next 2 cheat codes come in handy. So what are these cheat codes, Sam? Glad you asked. These are optional accessories that you can add to your tools to help unleash your tools to their fullest creative potential. Now I know I call these cheat codes, but in technical terms, they're called jigs. So let's start with our first jig. This is probably the most used accessory on my channel and in my entire shop, and it's for a good reason. The Craig Rip Cut is something that attaches to your circular saw and allows you to make straight and repeatable cuts. Sort of similar to a table saw, but without the intimidation factor and without also like the giant saw in the middle of your workshop. It's a great option for breaking down bulky sheet goods such as plywood, which is a game changer in small workshops, like my 12 by 12 shed that I used to work in. It's small, it's portable, it's easy to use, and it's reasonably priced right around $50. Personally, mine has paid for itself 10 times over, and I often actually find myself still using this more than my table saw when working with like large sheet goods. That being said, I love this, but it'll never fully replace my table saw. You know, table saws are just like more powerful and robust, but when you're first starting and a table saw isn't really an option, like this really is the best thing. When I first started making furniture, I'll be real, the process felt really scary. Where was I even supposed to start? How do these things even fit together and stay together? How do people make cabinet doors without them falling off? And then I discovered the Craig jig. This not only opened so many avenues for woodworking for me, but also helped make my content and my building process like so much more approachable for me and for anybody who is watching my channel. Yes, I'm talking to you, all of you future woodworkers of the universe. So what does this accessory do, Sam? Well, this accessory is a woodworking jig that creates pocket holes. Now, if you don't know what a pocket hole is in simple terms, they're angled holes that are drilled into a piece of wood that allows a screw to be driven through that into another piece of wood to create a strong hidden joint. And I could go down the rabbit hole on pocket jigs for like literally an entire video, but I won't do that yet. Ultimately though, I do have an entire furniture making playlist on my channel, and I also have building plans where you can make furniture with all of the tools that I mentioned in this video. I got you, fam. This little jig basically streamlines a lot of the big furniture building process, and just like the Rip Cut, they're small, portable, and affordable. I believe the entry-level version starts at about $40. Okay, like there aren't many downsides to it, I'm gonna be real. But I guess like if you're looking to make more fine-tuned or traditional furniture, then a pocket jig is really not the accessory for you. Honestly, I'm over a decade into this building journey and I still use it on the regular. I mean, like, of course I've upgraded mine to the highest tier version available, but even with the starter jig, you will be able to build some like pretty cool projects. We talked about the pros and the cons of each tool, accessory, storage option that I think every beginner should start with in their first workshop. So let's just take a moment to talk about how much money it could realistically cost for you to start your first workshop. So let's just say you bought one pack out and the combo kit that I showed you before. That's already an entire workshop for under $500. Now, on top of that, to round out the core 5 tools, I mentioned that you probably need to buy a brad nailer. So that brings the total of the essential tools and storage solutions to $558. Now, if you add those optional accessories, then you pretty much have everything for your business for about $650. Honestly, all you have to do after that is just add the cost of as many clamps as your heart desires right on top of that. Hopefully for free from your local Facebook Marketplace. And like I mentioned earlier, like me talking about all of these costs doesn't include the option of buying used tools and accessories, which could honestly drastically reduce the price of your overall starting costs. But even then, for $650, you really could just have kind of all the brand new tools you need to get your woodworking business or hobby or adventure off the ground. And listen, $650 is a lot of money. But I'll share a personal story. My first ever woodworking project that I got sponsored on my blog paid me $750, and that was like 12 or 13 years ago. Yes, I know I'm aging myself. Basically, if I were to buy all those tools today and still make that same amount of money on my first woodworking project on my website, like I would have just made $100. I could just buy like so much coffee and bagels with that. Moral of the story is sometimes you just gotta invest the money to make the money, and that is particularly true when you're jumping into woodworking and making. I'm gonna be prolific here for a second. Your woodworking journey is as unique as you are. And hopefully this video can act as a good starting point for you if you're just starting out. Honestly, like, I wish I had a video like this to watch when I was first starting, because it would have been really helpful. The beauty of woodworking is that you're always learning and you never stop learning. So that being said, let me know in the comments what your tips are down below, and hopefully those who are just starting out can gain some more knowledge in addition to whatever I shared in this video. We're a community here, let's help each other out. Also, drop a comment below and let me know if you like this video and if there's another topic that you'd like me to cover in depth like this one. But until then, friends, I do have a lot of projects to get back to in my own woodworking shop, so I'll see you soon. Happy DIYing.